The sky split open at 09:17 station time, which was inconvenient because that was exactly when Irene Vale had decided to reform his life. "I will not drink recycled coffee today," he informed the vending unit with solemn determination. "Statement statistically improbable," the unit replied. Before Irene could defend his integrity, the ceiling of the research dome peeled back like fruit skin. A column of violet light poured down, humming with the polite menace of advanced technology. Instruments shrieked, gravity hiccuped, and the vending unit announced, "Unexpected celestial intrusion. Please rate your experience from 1 to 5. Irene did not have time to choose a number. The light wrapped around him, warm and firm, and the last thing he saw was his coffee spiraling upward as if it too had diplomatic business elsewhere. When sensation returned, it did so with dramatic flair. His boots touched a floor that felt both solid and theoretical. The air carried a faint electric sweetness. Above him arched a dome of living crystal threaded with slow pulses of light, like thoughts passing through a colossal brain. He was not alone. Figures encircled him, tall, poised, clad in armor that shimmered between shades of blue and silver. Their helmets were open, revealing faces that were almost human. Almost. Their eyes held a luminous depth, and their ears were long, tapering elegantly past their jawlines, adorned with thin metallic rings that glowed faintly. Irene blinked. "I assume this is not about the coffee." One of them stepped forward. "Human designated Irene Vale. You are summoned to the Grand Court of the Orolith Empire." He brushed invisible dust from his sleeve. "Of course I am, and here I was worried my week would be dull." They guided him through corridors that curved like strands of DNA. The walls shifted with soft light, responding to movement, perhaps to mood. Irene resisted the urge to apologize to them in case they were sensitive. Outside vast openings, he glimpsed a city spiraling outward in impossible geometries, towers bending gracefully, platforms drifting with casual defiance of gravity. "This is a misunderstanding," he said as they moved. "I once returned a library book 3 days late. If this is about that, I can explain." No one answered. Their armor flickered to a cooler hue. They entered the court, sound diminished as if swallowed. The chamber was immense, layered with ascending tiers where nobles sat in ordered crescents. Suspended orbs drifted overhead, projecting faint holographic scripts that rearranged themselves in complex patterns. At the far end rose a throne formed of interlocking arcs of pale metal, hovering slightly above the floor. Irene felt very human and very small. A herald stepped forward, voice amplified by unseen fields. The language that rolled across the chamber was musical, edged with harmonics that resonated in Irene's ribs. A translation device drifted near his shoulder and whispered, "The Queen approaches." She was already there. Seated upon the hovering throne, she appeared at first glance like a woman from Earth placed carefully into another spectrum. Her features were precise, intelligent, her posture composed. Her skin carried a subtle iridescent sheen, and her ears, long, elegant, adorned with luminous rings, angled slightly forward as she regarded him. Her gaze struck him with recognition. The herald announced his name. It echoed, corrected itself mid-syllable, then rang clear. "Irene Vale of Earth." The queen rose. She did not rise slowly nor ceremonially. She rose as if pulled upward by a force stronger than protocol. The levitation field beneath her throne flickered. A ripple passed through the chamber. Nobles stiffened. One dropped a luminous tablet that dissolved before it struck the floor. Silence fell so completely that Irene could hear his own pulse, which chose this moment to practice percussion. He stared at her. Memory tugged at him. Silver sand, a broken craft half buried in a desert on the outer colonies. A woman insisting she was absolutely not important while issuing instructions like a battlefield commander. He remembered arguing with her about whether glowing faintly counted as a medical emergency. The queen stepped down from the throne. Each movement was measured, yet beneath it lay something urgent. Her long ears tilted forward, the metallic rings along them emitting a soft harmonic hum. "You," she said, her voice carried without amplification, resonant and steady. Irene swallowed. "Hello. I'm going to guess you're not here about the library book." A flicker crossed her expression, something dangerously close to amusement. Murmurs erupted across the tiers. Colors flashed along garments and armor, violet, crimson, sharp white. The floating orbs spun more quickly, scripts rearranging in agitated patterns. One figure stood from the upper tier. "Your Majesty," the translation device murmured, This human is of no political significance. The queen did not look away from Irene. He is, she replied, of personal significance. If the chamber had possessed weather, it would have thundered. Irene raised a tentative hand. Before we proceed to whatever interstellar trial this is, I would like to state for the record that I recycle. The nearest guard's armor flickered in what might have been suppressed laughter. The queen descended the final step until only a few paces separated them. Up close, her eyes held the memory of stars. He saw it clearly now, the same eyes that had narrowed at him years ago when he refused to leave her behind despite the drones scouring the sky. "You saved my life," she said quietly. The words struck harder than the abduction beam. Around them the court bristled, protocols shifted, alliances recalculated in silence. Irene let out a slow breath. "Ah," he said. "So this is about the desert." Her ears angled further forward. "Yes," she answered, and the faintest smile touched her luminous face. "This is about the desert." Silence held for exactly 3 heartbeats before the court remembered how to breathe. Then it breathed all at once. Voices overlapped in sharp musical bursts. The floating translation unit near Irene's shoulder sputtered as it tried to keep up. "Life debt. Security breach. Improper acknowledgement. Human contamination." Irene raised a finger. "I wash my hands regularly." No one seemed reassured. The queen did not turn from him. "You will stand beside me," she said. It was not a request. 2 guards hesitated. Their armor flickered between disciplined blue and uneasy violet. Finally, they stepped aside. Irene walked forward carefully, as though approaching a wild animal who might also command fleets. He stopped at her side. Up close, he noticed the faint hum from the metallic rings along her long ears shifting in tone. He remembered that sound. Years ago in the desert, it had wavered when she was injured and pretending not to be. A tall figure from the upper tier descended along a beam of light that behaved like a staircase. His garments shimmered with intricate patterns that hurt Irene's eyes if he stared too long. "Your Majesty," the figure said, "the declaration you imply would bind the throne to a non-citizen organism." Irene leaned slightly toward the queen. "I prefer person. Organism sounds like I should be kept in a jar." Her lips curved faintly before stilling. "He is not an organism, he is Irene Vale." The figure's gaze settled on Irene with clinical precision. "Records indicate you were stationed on the Frontier Research Colony Vierx 94 cycles ago." "That sounds correct," Irene said. "Lovely sunsets, mildly homicidal wildlife." A murmur rippled outward. The queen finally faced the court. "During the shadow incursion, my vessel was intercepted beyond our borders." The chamber reacted as if she had spoken a forbidden word. The floating orbs dimmed briefly. "There was no public record of such an incursion," the tall figure replied carefully. "There is now," she said. The tension thickened. Irene cleared his throat. "For context, your collective glowiness, I did not know she was royalty. She told me she was a traveling mineral enthusiast." A few startled sounds emerged from the tiers. One noble actually choked. The queen's ears angled slightly outward. "I was undercover." "You were unconscious," Irene corrected gently. "Undercover implies strategy." Her eyes flashed, but not with anger. "I regained consciousness." "Yes," he said, and immediately attempted to give me orders. A dangerous quiet fell again, but this time it trembled with something almost incredulous. The tall figure folded his hands. "If what Her Majesty claims is accurate, then this human interfered in a classified military engagement." "I applied bandages," Irene said, "very rebellious ones." "He extracted me from a crash site," the queen continued. "He shielded me from hunter drones. He refused evacuation without me." All eyes turned to Irene. He shifted his weight. "In my defense, leaving an injured stranger in a desert full of armed machines seemed rude." "You were aware of the drones?" Another voice demanded. "They were shooting at us," he replied. It was a strong hint. A flicker of color moved across several garments. Shock, perhaps embarrassment. The queen stepped forward 1 pace. "According to the Codex of Orolith, a life preserved under mortal threat establishes a bond beyond treaty and bloodline." A collective intake of breath followed. The tall figure's expression tightened. "The Codex was written before contact with humanity." "Honor predates humanity," she said evenly. Irene leaned slightly toward her again. "This sounds important. Should I look solemn?" "You should remain silent," she murmured without moving her lips. He nodded solemnly. "Understood." The court erupted once more, though more controlled this time. as if outrage had been organized into committees. If the life debt is invoked, someone called, the human gains protected status within the Empire. Protected, Irene repeated quietly. From whom? Several heads turned toward him in unison. He raised both hands. Hypothetical question. The Queen lifted one hand and the chamber stilled instantly. The authority in the gesture was absolute. I invoke the life debt, she declared. The words resonated through the architecture itself. The floor beneath Irene's boots vibrated faintly, as though ancient systems had awakened to witness the claim. The floating orbs flared bright white, then rearranged their scripts into a single spiraling sigil above the throne. The tall figure bowed stiffly. Then by law, the human Irene Vale is under the sovereign's protection. Harm against him constitutes treason. Irene blinked. That escalated. The Queen turned to him fully now. For a fraction of a second, the weight of the Empire fell away from her expression, and he saw the same stubborn survivor from the desert. You once told me, she said softly, that debts are uncomfortable. He grimaced. They are. I once owed a colleague lunch for 3 years. And yet you refused to leave me, she continued. You were bleeding, he said simply. Also, you kept insulting my navigation skills. I could not allow that to be your final opinion of humanity. A faint ripple of restrained laughter moved through the lower tiers. Even one guard's armor flickered in warmer tones. The Queen's long ears tilted forward again, their rings humming in a softer register. Your navigation was inefficient, she said. You see? Irene replied, unacceptable as a last impression. For a heartbeat, something unspoken passed between them, memory of sandstorms, of distant explosions, of shared defiance beneath hostile skies. Then the tall figure spoke again, careful and cold. Your Majesty, invoking the life debt binds your reign to this human. Political factions will interpret this as favoritism. They may interpret, she said. I will rule. The chamber quieted once more, but this time the silence felt different, less shocked, more calculating. Irene exhaled slowly. I would like to point out, he said, that I did not wake up this morning expecting to destabilize an empire. The Queen glanced at him, nor did I expect to see you again. Well, he said lightly, though his pulse raced, I do try to be memorable. Above them, the sigil continued to spin, luminous and irrevocable. Across the tiers, alliances shifted in invisible patterns. And beside the throne of an alien empire, a human man stood under royal protection, wondering if stale coffee might have been the safer choice after all. The assassination attempt arrived disguised as applause. Irene recognized the shift a fraction of a second before the others did. In the desert years ago, the hunter drones had changed pitch just before firing. Now in the grand court, one of the floating orbs above the tiers altered its harmonic hum. The sound thinned, sharpened. Your Majesty, he said quietly. The orb split open. Instead of projecting law scripts, it unfolded into a lattice of weaponized light aimed directly at the Queen's spine. Irene did not think. Growth, he would later realize, sometimes meant acting before fear could rehearse its speech. He stepped into her. The blast struck the sigil still hovering above the throne. Energy cascaded downward in a storm of fractured brilliance. The chamber erupted. Guards surged. Nobles scattered with far less dignity than their garments suggested. Irene hit the floor hard, pulling the Queen with him. I really need to stop meeting you in situations involving incoming fire, he muttered. Her long ears rang with metallic resonance, the bands along them flaring bright. She extended one hand. A field snapped into place above them, deflecting secondary bursts from the malfunctioning orb. That was not malfunction, she said calmly. I suspected as much, he replied. Malfunctions rarely shout political slogans. Across the chamber, the tall counselor who had challenged her earlier stood frozen. His garments flickered erratically. Guards pinned him within seconds, weapons humming at his throat. The weaponized orb clattered to the floor, systems dead. The luminous sigil above the throne stabilized, pulsing once, twice, then dissolving as if satisfied. Silence returned, but it was no longer shocked. It was decisive. The Queen rose first this time, offering Irene her hand. He took it and stood without hesitation. In the desert, he had been a man who avoided conflict when possible, who studied alien microbes rather than alien politics. Now he faced an empire without flinching. You moved before my guard, she said softly. I'm improving my navigation skills, he answered. A faint curve touched her lips. She turned to the restrained counselor. You would challenge the life debt with violence. For the stability of the empire, he insisted. For your control of it, she corrected. The court watched. No one interrupted. Irene cleared his throat. If I may, as the apparently controversial person, I would like to suggest that shooting the queen rarely improves stability. A ripple of restrained laughter passed through the lower tiers, bolder this time. The queen lifted her chin. The empire will not fracture over fear, she declared. Nor will it shrink from change. The life debt stands. The alliance with Earth will be formalized. Murmurs shifted tone. Less outrage, more calculation. She continued, we have hidden the shadow incursion for cycles. We will not hide again. With a gesture, she signaled the floating systems. Data flooded the chamber, records of the secret conflict, proof of the crash, evidence of factions that had prolonged the war for profit. Gasps replaced whispers. The counselor's resistance faltered under the weight of truth displayed in unassailable light. Irene watched as the narrative of an empire rearranged itself. He understood something then. Loyalty was not weakness. It was leverage against corruption. The queen faced him once more. Irene Veil of Earth, she said, voice carrying clearly, will serve as ambassador between Orlith and humanity. He blinked. I was expecting perhaps a commemorative plaque. You will receive one, she replied. It will be very official. The court, perhaps exhausted by attempted regicide, did not object. In the days that followed, negotiations unfolded not in secret corridors, but openly within the Grand Court. Human envoys arrived, wide-eyed and underprepared for architecture that refused straight lines. There were misunderstandings about handshakes and a brief diplomatic incident involving a translation unit that rendered mutual prosperity as shared digestive experiment, but progress held. Irene found himself speaking not as a startled researcher, but as someone who had chosen his place. He no longer deflected responsibility with jokes alone. He used them to bridge silences. You once told me, he said to the queen during a quieter session, that compassion was inefficient. I was incorrect, she replied. Should I record that for posterity? Her ears angled forward. You already have. The disgraced counselor and his faction were tried under transparent proceedings. No shadows remained to shelter them. The empire steadied. On the final evening before the formal alliance signing, Irene stood beside the queen on a high balcony overlooking the capital. The city hummed not with unrest now, but anticipation. You could have returned to Earth immediately, she said. I could have, he agreed. But I once left you in a desert only after you could walk. I have a pattern. She regarded him with that depth that once frightened him. It no longer did. You have changed, she observed. So have you, he replied. You stand faster now. A quiet laugh escaped her, unguarded. The signing the next day bound two civilizations not through conquest, but acknowledgement. The life debt transformed from private bond to public bridge. When it was done, when the sigils sealed and the fleets recalibrated their trajectories toward cooperation instead of suspicion, the court rose, not in shock this time, but in recognition. Irene felt the weight of that moment settle into something steady inside him. He was no longer the man arguing with a vending machine about stale coffee. He was someone who had stepped into light, twice, and chosen not to retreat. As the chamber emptied, he glanced at the queen. So, he said lightly, no more deserts. She considered this. No more deserts, she agreed, unless diplomatic necessity requires one. He sighed. I will begin researching sand-resistant formal wear. Her laughter followed them as they walked from the throne together. Not ruler and rescued, not human and alien alone, but partners in a future neither empire had previously imagined. And this time, when silence fell across the court, it carried no fear at all.